we've probably done a disservice to our children, people of my age anyway, who pretty much wanted to give them everything, and we gave them everything. Now, I remember when I was 18 and 19, I couldn't wait to get out of home. Couldn't wait. Get out on my own, be independent and move on. I've got a 26 and a 24-year-old at home now, and they're not even thinking about moving out. Not even thinking about it. So we're protecting them from the real world and life. I don't know. But two choices in life. You make a good choice or a bad choice. Positive choice or a negative choice. When you get up in the morning and get out of bed, be for the rest of the day. When you come to a fork in the road like these young men do in our game every day, they can make the good choice or the bad choice. There's always two choices to make, and it's up to them how they make it. Two choices all the time. And I think that what we've got to do is keep on encouraging these guys to make the right choices all the time in so many facets of their life and in the game that we're teaching them. John Kennedy, in a short life and in a short career, in reality, made a lot of very pertinent comments. This man decided in 1960 that the Americans were going to send a person to the moon within that decade. You talk about goal setting. He set a very lofty goal. He put a time frame on it, and he got his whole country behind it. And he was shot in 1963 or 4. But the country continued on with that. In 1969, they landed a person on the moon. What a great leader! What a great inspiration to have that goal and to inspire a whole nation of 200 odd million people at that stage to get behind it and do it. And that talks more about continual improvement and inactivity and not changing programs and plans and so on. If it isn't written down, it doesn't exist. And I think a lot of times we don't record enough of what we do. It doesn't need to. It can be in a notebook. My best recording is in a notebook. You keep a notebook for every year. And when I was a swimming coach, I used a diary for every year. It's just handwritten. I tend to find a lot of times computers can make more work for you, and especially when you're sort of not at that age like a lot of you guys are. When you're a little bit older, it gives you more work to do rather than make it easier for you. But certainly I like to keep things down. Process. Make sure you've got your processes and plans documented and so on. So if it doesn't written down, it doesn't exist. Romans didn't conquer their world by forming committees, they did it by destroying their enemies. So again, a harsh comment, but I think what we do sometimes, the easy way out, and I think it's the thing that a head coach has got to do. A head coach has got to make these hard calls, these hard decisions. And especially in this day and age of football where it's salary cap, it's numbers of players you can have and so on, there needs to be a lot of emotion taken out of it. And that's really hard because coaches are people. Coaches are man managers. Coaches have emotions, that's why they do it. They have egos. They have all these things that don't really fit that hard call, hard decision mentality that's required to be successful in professional sport. But that's why they become good, successful head coaches, because they can make those decisions. Talked before about it, I think Tim said the difference between assistant coaches and head coaches and the communication of that. Probably the way I'd summarise that is that assistant coaches are making recommendations. Head coaches are making decisions. And in the end, the results are what's going to see the coach move forward, be more successful and so on. The coach is responsible for those decisions, and the coach in the end is going to be responsible for the performance of the team. So they have to make the good, hard, strong decisions. And it is hard when you've got a player who's played with you for so many years, but it just doesn't fit what's going to make it. And probably Wayne Bennett was able to do that with people like Wally Lewis and many of those great players there. But that's going to be more and more part of what goes on with your staff and with your players. The coach has got to make those hard calls and not got to get to the point and say, oh, we'll form a subcommittee about this and have a talk about it, the plans for the next year. Coaches, head coaches in an NRL team have to make the call. And they have to make the call hard, and they have to make it based on all the experience they have to make the right call. Resisting change is like holding your breath. If you succeed, you die. Change will keep coming. What if we treated the young blokes of today like we did the young blokes of 20 years ago? That's why I'm so much in awe of people like Tim and Brian Smith and Wayne Bennett, swimming coaches like Ken Wood, who turned 82 this year. These people have gone through enormous changes in personality of young men and women over the last few years. The Generation Y and you know, the way people think these days is so much different to the way people 20, 30 years ago thought. In the old days, a coach could go in and you know, lose it in there and abuse people and give it to them. That was the way motivation was when I played football. But now, you know, if on the rare occasion a coach does lose it, you can see some players getting back into their shell. We have to start now thinking about not just the emotional well-being of a football player. We've got to think about the emotional well-being and how we get the best out of an Islander player. How do we get the best out of a Middle Eastern player? How do we get the best out of an Australian young man? They're different. We have to think about the differences there. And you can't resist change as a coach. You know, there was no iPods in your ears when you're preparing for a football game when I played, but now, how many of the blokes are doing iPods and doing their Facebook and doing also just the way they relax and prepare? And it's different, and you have to move with the times. And some coaches can't do that. Angus Houston's the head of our Defence Forces, and he spoke to our high-performance swimming coaches group a couple of years ago, and he talked to us a lot about leadership and communication. And he said listening was 70% of communication. And I tend to think that's the case. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we should use them in that proportion. Larry King from CNN, just retired from CNN, never learned anything while he was talking. And I think that's often the case too. Going back to 70% of your learning is listening. I'll move through these a bit quick. I've got a number of these, so I'll move through things about leadership, and I think all coaches are leaders and man managers, as I said. Wayne Bennett talked about, you know, someone was giving him a bit of a rap at a press conference one day, and he said, well, you can't pat yourself on the back, you'll go to sleep. It's like a baby, and you pat them on the back and they go to sleep. And I think that's very important. You know, we can't take the accolades. You know, you like to get them, but you've got to be ready to move on and start making more important decisions. Ian Schuback was a game warden I met from South Africa, and he did a study on lions and talked a lot about the behaviours of lions and how they related to each other and so on. And and I think it's very much relates to a team. The power of the pride lies in the individuals, but the power of the individual lies in the pride. So when you've got a team, you really the power of that team really lies in the individuals performing and preparing and working together. But in the end, the power of that individual is enhanced dramatically by being part of a team. And you know, what happens in the Lions' life and what happens in our team life are just so important. Talked a little bit about Australia too before, and they won the America's Cup with John Bertrand. And they're just, you know, reading the book, the things that they looked at: hindsight, foresight, and insight, innovation, investment, and inspiration. And you know, I think that you know, innovation. Ben Lexon developed the wing keel, and you know, put that there. The investment came from Alan Bond, and the inspiration came from John Bertrand. And I think that they had many America's Cup attempts, but they succeeded at once in 126 years. And beat the Americans, and you know, they were able to capture all these things in one as they move forward to success. Respect all, fear none, and I think that was certainly Peter Cosgrove said that to us in a talk once, and he talked about the diggers, and especially in the old days, and how the mateship and what in the World War I and World War II, what they did that really built the culture of Australia, and how they formed teamwork and worked together, and how they respected all but they feared none, and they moved forward. And that's certainly something that we need to do. Muhammad Ali, you remember the ads for the impossible is nothing and so on. They were around. There was TV ads and big ads and the thing. They, you know, certainly. Yeah, impossible as nothing is something that's very much, no walls, no barriers. Put plans up that are going to make sure that you succeed. And the quote at the end: the fighters won far away from the witnesses, behind the lines, in the gym and out there on the road, long before I dance under the lights. You know, I think that's certainly what we do. We go training, you know, there's no one there, but then we go out on ANZ Stadium on grand final day. You know, you can't just go out there and win. It's about a plan. It's about the process, and I think that's no different for any sport or any successful person in life. Everybody counts or nobody counts. Now, I read that in those Michael Connolly books with Harry Bosch. I read a lot of that rubbish too, especially when I was travelling so much. Light reading that didn't bog you down too much. You can just read on the aeroplane. So it's a fiction crime fighter novel. But he talked about everybody counts or nobody counts. And I think in our teams, that is so important. Everybody, if you have a weak link in your team, or if you don't spend the time to work with a part of your team, that's going to let you down eventually. And you know, and we can't afford to lose that. And that was our team cheering at the Jewel and the Pool